Thank you for joining us this morning or afternoon or whenever you're actually looking at this video. This is 2 Samuel chapter 6 that we're going to be looking at this morning. This is the first recorded class of this, and so we're going to continue to record hopefully as we continue through the book of 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel chapter 6. We're going to jump right into it. Waste no time here this morning. We're going to start off right in the very beginning of chapter 6, verse 1. It says, David again gathered all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. And David arose and went with all the people who were with him to Baal-Judah to bring up from there the ark of God, which is called by the name of the Lord of hosts, who sits enthroned on the cherubim. And they carried the ark of God on a new cart, and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. And Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, were driving the new cart with the ark of God, and Ahio went before the ark. I want to start right here just looking at what David has been doing. David, remember, has simply made his name for himself very well. From the very beginning when he battled Goliath, people have been singing his praise. Since then, he has been exiled and taken over for Saul, and now he is in charge of the entire kingdom again. Israel has just pledged their allegiance to him, and so now he is the king of all of Israel. So what does he do? Well, he goes against the Jebusites and finally rids the land of the Jebusites and takes Jerusalem, the fortress on a hill, and we talked about that last week. But as he has all of this happening in his life, even the last thing is he has a palace that is built for him. He looks around and he sees himself living in this luxury, and yet the Ark of God is still living, is still not in the central city. And I think he sees this idea of bringing the Ark to Jerusalem as some sort of pinnacle for his leadership so far. He's trying to bring that ark in so that he can show the people that he is with God. I think his intentions are good. I don't think it's a bad thing that what he's doing. He's trying to bring the ark of God into the capital city. I think that's the new capital city, I should say. And so I don't think that's a bad thing up front. When we think about the Ark of the Covenant, we see this idea of this box that is made out of acacia wood and then covered with gold. It's beautiful. It's well crafted. It's very specific. God gives very, very specific instructions on how to build it and the dimensions and how to coat it, and how to carry it. So it's very, very important. And one of the reasons it's so important is because it's called the mercy seat of God. It is called the throne of God. It is the Ark of the Covenant. Inside the Ark, was the jar of manna, Moses' budded rod, the fragments of the Ten Commandments. All of these things are within this, and this is carried around supposedly by 12 priests. Now this is what it's supposed to be done. 12 priests representing the 12 tribes of Israel take the ark and they move it from place to place to place. Now the problem with this is, as we go back to this a little bit, we see the issue being that this has been at Abinadab's house now. I want you to remember what happened to the ark the last that we've seen the ark. The last time we saw the ark, it was actually in a field, because just before that, Eli's sons had taken it into battle without consulting with Eli, without consulting with the Lord. And so they took it into battle to try to beat the Philistines, and yet they ended up killed. And then the Ark of God being captured by the Philistines. And so we see, that they needed to, they didn't ask God. Let's just go back to that. They just didn't ask God. And so as they didn't ask God, it ends up captured. The Philistines don't do well with it. The Philistines don't do well with it. It's not supposed to be with the Philistines. It's supposed to be with the Israelites. And it only brings trouble to the Philistines, whether it's their god Dagon bowing down in front of it, and what I mean by that is a statue of him, the statue bowing down in front of it, or whether it's the rats, the tumors, no matter what it is, the Philistines decide they send it back. And as they send it back, it ends up in the field in Beth Shemesh. And in that field in Beth Shemesh, people are tempted. They see the Ark of the Covenant up close for the very first time. And so they actually go and they look inside of it, and at least 70 of them die just because they looked inside it. So the Ark is something that is not supposed to be fooled around with. Okay, and I don't think David is fooling around with it here, but not only is it not supposed to be fooled around with, but I think there's procedures and there's ways of doing things with the Ark that are right, and those things that are wrong. And the first thing that we see here is that as they go down to Abinadab's house, they go ahead and grab the Ark, and what do? Well, they put it on a new cart. Well, that's good, right? This is a new cart, which means a cart that's never been used before. So at least they thought about that maybe a new cart would be holy enough to hold the Ark of the Covenant. And you have Uzzah and Ahio, who are Abinadab's sons, who are also priests. Okay, so they're also priests. They're moving it. It's not David's men, going on, throwing it on the back of a wagon and coming back to Jerusalem. It's a new car, and it's two priests that are moving it. So David, I again believe, means no disrespect. He means well. He's trying to get that to bring it into the city of Jerusalem. Now, as we go on in verse 5, it says, "And David and all the house of Israel were celebrating before the Lord with songs, lyres, and harps, tambourines, and castanets, and cymbals. And when they came to the threshing floor of Nacon, Uzzah put his hand out to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen stumbled. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God struck him down there because of his error. And he died there beside the ark of God." So, I wanted you to picture this. It's very easy to picture this idea of David and all the house of Israel were celebrating before the Lord. As the cart comes, David has this parade happening in front of him. They're singing, they're playing instruments, they're making I don't want to say a ruckus, but they're definitely celebrating loudly, and so this isn't exactly how we picture the Ark of the Covenant either. As in the past, the Ark was again carried by 12 priests, and there was no celebrating in front of it. It was a very holy, reverend thing that they did. The priests were specially prepared in order to move the ark whenever they carried it. They, the ark itself was a picture of what God's throne is like. It is God's throne on earth. So it's not only meant to be holy, but it's you have to revere it. You have to revere it, and this is not showing him honor at all. When they came to the threshing floor, okay, so they're at the threshing floor, which the threshing floor is just a place where they bring wheat to throw down and have it trampled by oxen or donkeys or whatever animals they have at the time, or just beaten by the people against the floor. The threshing floor is a hard rock surface. It's meant to break the chaff and the wheat apart from each other. And if you think about that, the idea of chaff or just chaff or straw, think of it like straw. It's a lot like straw. Think of straw on a smooth rock surface. It's a slippery surface. There's no doubt about it. It's a very slippery surface, and the oxen stumbles. And so Uzzah, being the good man that he is, right? The good man that he is, he reaches out and takes hold of the ark. And God strikes him dead. Now I want you to think about that for a minute. There's a lot of people out there that look at this story and go, why? Why? All he did was try to save the ark. Well, I want you to really look at this section well with me here this morning. This is something that God is very serious about. Again, God's throne on earth. Okay, that this is where God met Moses and Aaron. This is where God, continues as we go forward. We'll see this in the Holy of Holies, where the blood is sprinkled on the ark, the mercy seat of God, once a year, every year. And so this is something that is not supposed to be fooled around with. And so as they get to that threshing floor and that oxen stumbles, Uzzah reaches out and touches the ark. Who's supposed to touch the ark? I'm telling you right now, no one is supposed to touch the ark. No one. No one is supposed to touch the ark at all. Well, what do you mean? Well, I mean this, very simply. They had giant poles that went through it. Now, I'm going to back up to that picture again. This picture I have has very short poles. It was definitely longer poles than this. But they had very long poles where 12 priests were able to carry this thing. 6 on each side. That means 3 on one end, 6 on one end, 6 on the other, holding these poles. So they're very long poles. The poles went through rings on the sides. They put the poles through and they carried the ark by the poles. They never touched the ark. I don't know how else to explain that. Uzzah reaches out and touches the ark, and everybody, most people I talk to think, well, he was just trying to make sure that it didn't touch the ground. After all, it's holy. Well, exactly. It's holy. It's holy, so it shouldn't be touched. And the sad part about this is that Uzzah knew better. Okay, I guarantee there was never a time when Uzzah went and touched the ark when it was in his father's house. Even when they loaded it, I doubt very much they touched it. They used the poles, they set it on the cart, and then they start moving the cart. It's not supposed to be touched. And that's why in verse 7 it says, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah. Okay? The anger of the Lord was kindled. He was already angry. Okay? He was already angry. Well, why is he angry? Because they're moving it with a cart. And here's the problem that we're having with this also. Did David go and ask, should I bring the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem? The answer is no. He hasn't done that. And so God is not happy with David. He's not happy with Uzzah or Ahio. He's very upset that the Ark of the Covenant is being moved at basically David's request. This isn't even though I think David's intentions again were good, he didn't think this through. He brought a new cart. He causes a parade. He wants Israel to be happy about the Ark of the Covenant finally being in the capital city and the nation being whole, not only politically but also religiously. And I get that. I get that. But he goes about it in the wrong way. And God struck down Uzzah because of his error. I want you to see that. Because of his error. So when we know better, okay, especially when it comes to the Ark of the Covenant here, if you know better, then you shouldn't be doing it. And he died there beside the ark of God. Right there and then, Uzzah is gone. Now, I don't know about you, but if I am in the procession or parade and all of this is happening, I am going to be a little bit scared, honestly. Freaked out, however you want to put it. And so that's exactly what happens next. Except for David looks at it in a different way. They're all scared, absolutely. But look at what he says. Verse 8, and David was angry because the Lord had broken out against Uzzah. And that place is called Perez Uzzah to this day. And David was afraid of the Lord that day, and he said, how can the ark of the Lord come to me? So David was not willing to take the ark of the Lord into the city of David, but David took it aside to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. And the ark of the Lord remained at the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household. So listen, this starts out, he is afraid. There's no doubt about it. I'm sure everybody was afraid at that point. But look at what else it says. It says David was angry. He's angry. Well, why is he angry? Because he's looking at this in the wrong way. Again, he's brought them, Israel, back together politically. He wants to bring them back religiously. He wants to show that the ark is in a place where it should be, right? In the capital now, in the new capital. But the problem is, that they're not doing it the right way. I can't stress that enough, and I know it's just I've said it several times already, but they're just not doing it the right way. Look at what he says in verse 9. How can the ark of the Lord come to me? Come to me. Now the question, I guess, is David, is the ark coming to David, or is he bringing the ark into the city? Is he bringing it into Jerusalem, or is he bringing it up there to make a name for himself? What are his motives? I've been saying I thought his motives were clean here, but are they? I still think he has good motives on this. I just think he's a little confused also. He makes that little bit of a mistake there, Freudian slip or whatever you want to say. So he's not willing to take the ark into the city anymore. He's afraid. How can we go a step further? And so instead, what he does is he takes it over to the house of Obed-Edom. Now listen, Obed-Edom, a good man. And I want to say, we don't know a lot about Obed-Edom, but we do know this. The ark shows up at his house on his doorstep, and he keeps it there for 3 months, and his household is blessed because he's a good man. And I guarantee because he stays away from it. He simply stays away from it. It remains at his house, and he doesn't touch it. That's the important part here. Now, I also have to say, thinking about this, is Obed-Edom, as David knocks on his door, a visit from the king. Whoa, the honor that must be. But then all of a sudden, well, we're going to leave the ark here. Well, why are you leaving it? Well, because it just killed somebody. Oh, great. The ark doesn't have a lot of good history up to this point. In the short-term history anyways, from Eli's sons taking it and them dying, and then the ark being captured, and then the rats and the tumors in the Philistine cities, and then the people dying in the field of Beth-Shemesh, and now Uzzah dying on the threshing floor. So Obed-Edom, if he knows anything about the short-term history, at least, of the ark, he would definitely fear having it in his house, and it would be revered and kept holy the way it's supposed to. The fear of the Lord should be real. It should be real, but that's a whole nother class. We won't get into that this morning. So as as he keeps it there for 3 months, it's good for his family because of the how they keep it. Look at verse 12. And it was told King David, the Lord has blessed the household of Obed-Edom and all that belongs to him because of the ark of God. So David learns right away, okay, it's been 3 months since Uzzah died. Been 3 months since I tried this before. God doesn't seem mad at Obed-Edom. He hasn't smited his family. So therefore, it says again, verse 12, so David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing. And when those who bore the ark of the Lord had gone 6 steps, he sacrificed an ox and a fattened animal. All right, so now he has, we're assuming, priests carrying it right now. They're bringing the ark, not on a cart anymore, but as they had walked 6 steps, he sacrifices an ox and a fattened animal. He's doing his very best to honor God every step of the way. It says in verse 14, and David danced before the Lord with all his might, and David was wearing a linen ephod. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouting and with the sound of the horn. All right, again, a giant parade here. David is wearing a linen ephod. He's not. He's simply trying his best to praise God in the way that he's trying to praise God. Is it right, what he's doing? Well, we'll get into that in just a minute. But I do want to say that David is very happy now. He's very happy. He is honoring God with a sacrifice every single step of the way. So David and the house of Israel brought the ark of the Lord. It was shouting the sound of the horn. And so as the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, Michal, the daughter of Saul, looked out the window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart. And they brought in the ark of the Lord and set it in its place inside the tent that David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And when David had finished offering burnt offerings and peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts, and distributed among all the people, the whole multitude of Israel, both men and women, a cake of bread, a portion of meat, and a cake of raisins to each. Then all the people departed, each to his house. So here's the interesting, very, very interesting situation going on here. In the very beginning of this, as the ark comes in, Michal, or Michael, however you want to pronounce it, the daughter of Saul, okay, David's first wife, looks out the window and sees him leaping and dancing before the Lord. Now you would think, okay, that's all good, but she despised him in her heart. Now we're gonna talk a little bit about that in the end of the chapter, so we're gonna hold off on that. But I just want you to understand that she sees this as not a good thing. Okay, why does she despise him? Again, we'll get into that in just a minute. But as the ark is brought in, it's set in its place. David has already set up a place. He had a place set up 3 months ago for the ark to come into, but he finally gets to bring the ark in, and they continue to offer burnt offerings. Now, the place that they have set up, there is some conjecture. Is this the tabernacle? We're really not sure at this point. It says inside the tent David had pitched for it. So we're not sure if that's just a tent that David has picked out, or whether that actually is the tabernacle that Moses and the Israelites carried around the desert. We're not positive of either way. But at the same time, we do know that David brings it in, and the offerings continue all day. he offers burnt offerings, peace offerings. He continues to praise the Lord. He continues to offer the offerings to honor God. And when he's done, he doesn't just honor God, but then he honors all the people. Okay? So what a day. The Ark of the Covenant comes into town. There's a great big parade, celebration. The king is there. All the people are there. There's burnt offerings, and then there's food for everybody. Everybody, both men and women, get a cake of bread, a portion of meat, a cake of raisins. David takes care of everyone to kind of show how plentiful his kingdom is going to continue to be. So it's a great day for Israel at this point. David finally does what he thinks he needed to do. Again, I want to go back and say, he did not ask God before he moved this. He did not ask God before he moved the Ark of the Covenant. So the only person that's actually gained anything out of this so far is Obed-Edom and his family, who were blessed for those 3 months. So now David returns to bless his household in the last part of this. Right? In the last part of this, David returns to bless his own household, but Michal, daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, "How the king of Israel honored himself today, uncovering himself today before the eyes of his servants, female servants, as one of the vulgar fellows shamelessly uncovers himself." And David said to Michal, "It was before the Lord who chose me above your father and above all his house to appoint me as prince over Israel, the people of the Lord, and I will celebrate before the Lord. I'll make myself yet more contemptible than this, and I will be abased in your eyes. But by the female servants of whom you have spoken, by them I shall be held in honor." And Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no children to the day of her death. All right, so here's the thing. As we look at this, earlier on it said that she despised him in her heart. Here's what's going on. David, why is David king? Well, David is king because Saul is gone. David continued to honor the king as long as he was alive. But here I have major problems with David's whole attitude in this. You see several faults as he looks at this. David, I guess in just a couple words, I will say David is full of himself at this point. David believes that he can do no wrong at this point. Look at what he says again. He goes home to bless and her response is, "How can the king? Again, this is definitely facetious here. How the king of Israel honored himself today." She doesn't believe that, obviously. Uncovering himself before the eyes of his servants. In other words, she doesn't believe he has acted like a king. Now, this is the daughter of Saul. Saul, a man who definitely did not act like a king in several different occasions, kind of had some anger issues and throwing some spears, but at the same time, he did, act in a certain way. And so she's measuring David up to that scale, and David's just not measuring up at the moment. He's uncovering, in this parade that he had, and his dancing with all his might, he's half dressed, uncovering himself. He's not showing himself as an honored king, right? But she says, as one of the vulgar fellows shamelessly uncovers himself. So she believes that everything that he has done today, as far as bringing the Ark of the Covenant into town, all the dancing and everything that went on before it was was for nothing. It was just to show people, that he's in control and he can do anything he wants. David looks at her and said, "It was before the Lord I did this." And then, but if he stopped there, I'd be okay with this verse. I really would. It was before the Lord. Say, if he explains himself and says, "Listen, I wasn't doing that for anybody else. I was just doing it for God." But he doesn't stop there. And he wasn't doing it just for God. Look at what he says. This is throwing it right back into her own, throwing it right back to her, throwing it in her face, however you want to say it. Who chose me above your father. Wow. Well, I have to be honest. I don't agree with that part of the verse, because, and I don't agree with David here. David, is again kind of full of himself at the moment. He says, "Who chose me above your father?" Well, no. God did not choose David above Saul. God chose Saul. Saul was the appointed king. Saul did bad things, therefore God chose another. Not above Saul, but to replace Saul. And that's why David never took Saul's life. Because Saul was God's appointed. So, who chose me above your father? No, that's not true at all. And above all his house. Okay, that's again just not true. To appoint me, it says prince, but it could be leader, over Israel, the people of the Lord. So he kind of, throws it in her face here and says, "Listen, I was doing it before the Lord, and the Lord is the one who put me in charge here." And, got rid of, basically saying, "You got rid of your no good father and no good family." He put me above. I'm better than they were. So therefore, look what he says next. "So I'll make myself yet more contemptible than this. I will be abased in your eyes." I'll do anything I want, in other words. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter how you see me. It doesn't matter at all. And so he goes on to say this to her, and he really is demeaning her in saying this. I'll do what I want. I'm the king. I can do whatever I want. And you know what? Even if you think I'm contemptible, he says here, by them I shall be held in honor. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure that they're going to hold him in honor for very long if he acts like a fool all the time. There is a way a leader should act. It's never really changed over time. There is a way a leader is supposed to treat his people, his family. And I think it's important to note here that David, in the heat of the moment, in the excitement of the day, he does not treat his wife the way she should be treated. And he does not act in a kingly manner. And he does not act specifically only to honor God. The last verse of the chapter says this, and Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no children to the day of her death. Some of you may have in your Bibles, they had no relations to the day of her death. So they stopped being together as husband and wife. He kept her, he took care of her, but they did not see eye to eye, nor did they come together anymore as husband and wife. So the story of the Ark of the Covenant coming to Jerusalem is important because of the fact that the Ark needs to be in Jerusalem. It needs to come to Jerusalem. David brings it to Jerusalem so that his son will build a temple. Obviously, David wants to build a temple, and we'll find that out in a few chapters. But David's not allowed to build the temple, so Solomon's going to build that temple, and so this Ark is there, and it's important that the Ark is there. It's there so David can protect it. Not that it needs protecting, but it's there so David feels like it's being protected. And again, it brings all of Israel together, not only politically as he did as he joined the houses of Saul and the house of David, but also religiously, as now Jerusalem will become the focal point of the Jewish religion. And so it's very important that the Ark is there. So that's chapter 6. We're going to end right there. Short class today, but it's a lot shorter, obviously, just recording like this. So I hope that you've enjoyed the class. We're hoping that we can be again live next week. So this may be the only recorded class, the only recorded class where there wasn't a live part. So again, I hope you have a great day. For those of you out there, it is Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to you all. You have a great day. God bless.